Lindsay Myers. I graduated in 2015 and majored in forensic archaeology. I actually, my experience is quite interesting because I'm coming into the program as a teacher, but I've always been interested in history and actually, quite funny enough, cemeteries. Um, so, um, so around 2012, I will go on to the next slide here. I started becoming really interested in this area of history, and I thought, so maybe I should further that passion and study in the area if possible. So I began different master's programs all across Europe because I was actually teaching in Europe at the time. So then I came across the archaeology program in Bournemouth University, and I applied in 2013, and I got accepted. I also had to complete a placement program before I began my studies in Bournemouth University. So that was about 3 weeks, and I did it in Reading, UK. And I also wrote an application essay for admission. So I started my program in September 2013, and I actually began in archaeological practice, and it was a very generalized program. And within about 1 or 2 months, I realized I think I'm actually more interested in human remains. So that's when I switched into forensic archaeology. And so within maybe about December, I started studying something called crime scene management, and that was just mind blowing. I thought, oh wow, this is amazing. This is definitely the area that I want to take my career. Uh, so I just, and I obviously I did really well in that too because I had such a passion for it. So then, obviously, I did have challenges at Bournemouth. It was probably the hardest academic experience I've ever had. Because for one, it was a new area for me of studies, but also I think that just the different area of studies, and also the fact that the the assignments were quite difficult. I found osteology very difficult because it's there's so much attention to detail, and then but I think that through it all, I mean, I had a wonderful experience, and it was so gratifying to be able to do all of that in 1 year. And also, I had an amazing support network from my professors, from my friends. That's what pulled me through. And by the end of the year, by September 2014, I had to submit a dissertation, and that was about, I think, 70 pages long, and I had to put in about 8 months of work for that dissertation, and I think that was probably the part that made me the most proud of my experience at Bournemouth. And I enjoyed every minute of it because I really love to write. And so that was great. Um, so I just have some pictures here. So this the first one of me in the white outfit by the crashed airplane. That's an experiment, an auditing assignment, and it was for fencing management. It was we were taught about the recovery process, and it was great to be a part of that. And the second one here was me digging up in the ground and getting very dirty and trying to find human remains. Of course, it's pretend, it wasn't real, so but it was just it was about the learning process. And it was great to be involved with that. So now, I mean, as I said, crime scene management is the subject area where it really turned things around for me. It really made me realize how I want to take my career. And so I moved back to Canada in early 2016. I actually didn't intend for that to happen. I intended to stay in Europe, and that's where I would live my life. Um, as it turns out, I'm not sure if that will happen anymore, but for now, I'm here in Montreal. I'm still teaching adults, but because I have such a passion for forensic and crime scene management, that area, I'm still striving to find opportunities in that area. And as you see here from my slide, I volunteered in Auschwitz. Actually, I was lucky enough to do that because I have some experience history in Poland. So after graduating, I went back to Poland and I did some work for them in Auschwitz. And also in Montreal, I have written and published an article about missing and murdered Aboriginal women, which was also a great experience to have my own work published. And I have received training in emergency disaster relief. And now, currently, I'm doing some volunteer work in family tracing. So that is the area where I'm looking to take my career, specifically in searching for missing people and helping with that. So I know it's a very specific area, but without doing that master's degree, it wouldn't have led me. So in terms of advice for others that want to start their career in archaeology, I just have a few pointers. I think just be sure 100% that's the direction you want to take your career. It can be sometimes challenging to find work in the area, but I think that if you have the passion and you have the connections, then it's definitely very possible. It's all about networking. So I think that as soon as you start your network, then you can meet many great people, and that can take you to where you want to be. And just I ended with I don't have any regrets going to Bournemouth. I think that studying at Bournemouth was an amazing experience for me. I think I'm a person that loves water, so being close to water was a wonderful thing. Studying also as an international student was particularly interesting for me because that was my whole network of friends. All of the people that I met were also international like myself. So I had that in common. And yeah, I realized how far you can push yourself, and you never give up when you study for semesters. So I think that's the end of my presentation. Have a slide here. But thank you very much for allowing me to talk about my experience. It's been wonderful to talk about it, and I would recommend going to university to anybody who's interested in doing that. Thank you. I will now hand this over to Luke, who will be talking about his experience at Bournemouth.
Hey, yes. My screen. Oh. Okay, can you see my screen? I'm going to assume yeah. So, yeah, I moved to Canada in June last year. to work as an archaeologist. I was working in England and I just felt like a change, and Canada seemed like a good choice. So starting at BU was a useful introduction. You know, getting a degree in archaeology helps you get a job because a lot of companies will have that as a basic requirement. And on top of that, I got a lot of practical experience at Bournemouth from the field school in first year, and I volunteered on like a bunch of lecturers' digs and have a little project. So I ended up with 14 weeks digging experience by the time I graduated, which is more than I think a lot of other people at different universities in the UK. And that was helpful when applying for jobs in Canada. So the type of work I've been doing here is forestry, mixture of sort of forestry survey and shovel test pitting. Kind of large open excavations like happen in England are less common here just because of the type of archaeology available. So the forestry survey is just literally walking through the forest for 8 hours a day, assessing landforms and geographic features to work out if there's been any prior occupation by people in, you know, the last 3,000 years of Canadian history. And yeah, it's pretty hard work at times. You can just kind of see in that picture in the background that the type of area you're walking over is, you know, it's not paths, it's wild. There's fallen over trees, you're walking up and down hills. It can be really hot, which surprised me. In September when I was working, it was like 40 degrees with humidity, you know, which wasn't pleasant. And then in November, it was like -10, and that's equally not great. But most of the time, you're in the middle. You know, it's a nice 20 or 30 degrees, which is okay to work in. And I've done the 2 jobs I've had. One was just a kind of a Monday to Friday, weekends off, but the other one was a shift work type thing. So we did 3 weeks on away work, and then like a whole week off to yourself. That's quite nice. And this is some of the archaeology you can find. So on the left, there's some nice lithics. They're just some flakes from a tool, probably a scraper. A nice fine-grained igneous rock. You can see the strike pattern there. They're quite nice. They're my first finds. And also, so they're about maybe 2,000 years old. And then on the right, something completely different. Some World War II bullets I dug up on a site. And I mean, these aren't in the like context of that project, didn't count really as archaeology, so I got to keep them. But yeah, it just shows the range of history available in Canada. And then yeah, a bit more about what you actually go through in Canada. So it is seasonal work here, like so spring to autumn. I haven't worked since mid-November, and that's purely because in the winter the ground freezes, everything gets covered in snow. It makes it a lot harder to do archaeological work. Not all work stops, but most companies really minimize their workforce and have sort of just like a skeleton crew, which are normally more experienced people who have worked for the company for 3 or 4 years. So a lot of people get laid off. But Canada has great, like a really good benefit system. So I'm being paid money from the government, even though I'm not working. That's plenty enough to keep me alive. And then when I was working, I felt like it was good money compared to the UK, you know, $18 to $22 an hour. I've converted it there, and that's more than I was earning as like an entry-level archaeologist in England. And to me, some Canadians would disagree, the cost of living here is really affordable. You know, rent is way cheaper than England. Well, it's the part of England I was living in, Milton Keynes, rent's a lot cheaper than there, and food and stuff, it's all pretty affordable. So if you want to work in Canada, how to do it? So if you're a UK citizen, and I think also a citizen from other Commonwealth countries like Australia or New Zealand, you can get a 2-year work travel visa called International Experience Canada. They're pretty easy to get. It's like a lottery system. You just enter all your information to the website, and they have a set amount of visas they can give out in the year. And every now and again throughout the year, they just draw some names and provide you with a visa. So I was really lucky. I got mine within like a month of applying. But I know sometimes it can take longer, or you might not get one. You know, there's nothing you can do to improve your chances. But if you do get one, I'd recommend definitely getting one first before you start looking for jobs, because most companies won't really consider you unless they know you are allowed to work in Canada. But if you get one, you want to be applying for jobs this kind of year at the start of the season. March, April is when all the hiring happens. And most of the time, like, companies won't advertise jobs on the through job posting websites. You just need to email them directly. So I emailed like 40 different companies across all of Canada when I was looking for a job, and I think I had like a few like responses and then one interview, and I just took the first job I was offered based off that interview. And one of the things that helped me get the job was my experience in the UK. So when I described to them what I'd been doing in the UK in commercial work, they were like, yeah, that's great experience. We'll definitely hire you. And the most important thing I'd say is be willing and flexible to travel around Canada for work. And also, if you're here for just 2 years, it is good because you get to see a lot of the country. So I've worked in 3 provinces so far: Nova Scotia, which is right in the east, Ontario, and British Columbia, which is right in the west. And I've just moved to Alberta for work for this coming season as well. And there's my email if you want to contact me after this webinar is over.
Cool. Thank you, Luke and Lindsay. That's really nice. Wonderful.